Many years ago, they were trying to bring this entire field down in the early 80s. There was something called the Quackery Report, and they were aggressively coming after all of us. There weren't many of us then, early 80s. And they were close to closing us. Chiropractors wouldn't be here anymore. It would only be allopathic doctors and pharmacies. That would be it. They failed, thank God, and that's another part of the story, because millions of Americans wrote in and stopped it. And they were shocked because they didn't know millions of Americans were interested in freedom of health. They thought, well, we can say they're democratic, but not really big on it. So what happened is, in that process, part of it was I had to go in front of Congress, and I had to speak. And they chose me as being the nutritional guy, and I brought in 50 what they called anecdotal cases of Hippocrates of all healed diseases they were told they were going to die from. And I brought them in and their children and their family, and they all sat in the room with me. And who they chose for the emotional stuff was a guy called Norman Cousins. Norman Cousins at that point was a very well-respected writer who healed himself of an inoperable cardiovascular disease from mentality and laughter and joy. And he was an extremely bright guy, so questioned, well, gee, the doctor told me last week I was going to die, and now the doctor tells me I don't even have any sign of this, and here are the pictures. Do you think it was the fact that I didn't want to cry so much, so I put comedies on and I laughed for a week? And he delved into it and literally had some support from the psychiatric community and the medical community. People like Bernie Siegel, really extraordinarily open-minded doctors at that point. And they actually hired him because he was such an auditor at UCLA as a visiting professor. So at UCLA, his classes were so well attended that they'd have 10 times more than could get in the class. He did something brilliant to get up in front of Congress and speak. He went into one room and convinced 60-some kids, his students, that you're on barbiturates at a clinical level, you're going to go to sleep, this is what's going to happen to you, injected them with amphetamines, his doctors did, and left the room. Went down the hallway, told all of them, you're on amphetamines, you're going to be running around at night, and you're not going to be able to sleep, and gave them all barbiturates, clinical levels. Well over half the group in each case acted just like he told them they were going to. So what he did is he stood up. It was a beautiful, I wish I had recorded this thing and written it down at least. What he basically said in a nutshell is, we have volumes and volumes of information about what negative thought does to the human body and the anatomy and causative effect of disease. But we have very little on the power of the mind and what it can do to change you. And he said, here's a study I conducted in the last 2 weeks at UCLA. And blew them right over. They sat with their mouth open. And when they started up with us, we said, look, you may call them anecdotal, but do they look like your wife? Do they look like your husband? Do they look like your children? And then think of that and ask if your children are anecdotal and your wife is. These people were all flushed down the toilet and told basically you're going to die, and here they are sitting there healthy today. And it wasn't that speech or anything that stopped it. It was millions of people writing in. They would have walked over us like a bulldozer anyway. So you're right. Read the works of that. Carl Symington. Carl Symington is wonderful. Carl Symington was the first at the University of Oregon, then the University of Texas, that went on the street as any of us can do who works with cancer and could pick cancer people out. One of my plagues when I'm in any city, I don't look up because I diagnose people. That's every doctor does that, by the way. So you have to look down. You can't look at people because you go nuts. This one, oh my God, that kid is, that type of thing. So he would go on the street in Texas and pull people off and say, do you have cancer? Yes, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, whatever it is. Can you spend 5 to 10 minutes with me? And he sat them down. This is in the 70s when there were Pac-Men. Remember Pac-Men? Little round things with mouths. And he said, now close your eyes and put Pac-Men, and everyone knew what Pac-Men were, and picture Pac-Men eating your cancer. And shockingly, he proved that within 5 minutes, statistically, the cancer cell rate in everybody's body dropped on a 10% average. Some were more, some were less, but 10% average. That's how powerful the human mind is. There was a recent study reported in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association. I reported this to the group here last week, where they took 9 people, told them all they had pancreatic removal, the pancreas was removed, only removed half of them. Everyone except one acted like they had their pancreas removed. All their symptoms were gone. And the half the group that didn't have it have. 4 of them didn't have it out. They acted just like nothing's wrong now. That's how powerful it is. Can even come. Look at this with wives and husbands. How many people do not know grandfather or an uncle or the guy down the street? They were married 50 years, the wife dies, 3 days later the husband dies. They do an autopsy. I mean, I think I'd die if Anna Maria died. You know, that simple. I'm that connected to her. And the fact is, it's the mind. It's not the physical body in those cases. So there is an inseparable connection between mind and body. And until we grow up and mature in all areas of medicine to understand that, you're going to be screwed as a patient.